Hi, everyone. If you're just joining, I'm getting ready to go live. So as soon as I see all the streams up and going, I'm going to get started. Of course, lots of exciting things to talk about. We just had a big election, the first election right after 2020, the first big election rather after 2020. So we'll talk a little bit about that, definitely. We'll also talk about the reconciliation bill because I know that's on your mind, especially if you voted for the Democrats to be in, which, you know, they kind of do have a trifecta right now in Congress, and let's see how they're using it. So we'll go over that, and we will talk about what's happening in Texas. Usually nothing good, unfortunately, because the GOP runs Texas, and they have kind of, taken a dive off the deep end in terms of what they're doing with voter suppression and extreme gerrymandering. And so the latest is that the DOJ has sued Texas over Senate Bill 1. So we'll go a little bit over that to end tonight, and we'll focus in on specifically the reconciliation bill. So to get started, my name is Donna Imam, and I'm running for U.S. Congress in Austin, Texas. Texas got two new U.S. congressional districts, and Austin happens to get one of those districts right here. So this is an exciting time for our race. It's only 3 months away. Early voting starts in February 14th. And March 1st is election day. So before you know it, today is November 4th. And on November 4th, we just had Halloween, and then we've got Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then we have the new year, and then February is here and election season starts. So we have very little time left. Before we get into all the details, I want to let you know that other than the 7 p.m. stream every Thursday, I also do a Twitter Spaces at 9 p.m. Central Time every Monday. And this is a really amazing opportunity to interact with other people, ask me questions, share your opinion on some of these issues. And last Monday, I had a very revealing conversation with many Democrats from across the country, as well as right here in Central Texas, in Austin, Texas, sharing their opinions on the reconciliation bill and what matters and what doesn't. So if you are on Twitter and you have the app on your phone, follow me, Donna Imam TX, and join in the Twitter Spaces. It's very easy to do. All you have to do is follow me and then join when the purple button appears at 9 p.m. Central Time on Mondays. So with that, let's get started. What's left in the reconciliation bill? So I want to jog your memory a little bit because we've been covering this now for many weeks. There's lots of things in there, but the ones that I was very excited about, or I think are really, really important to working families, even though the reconciliation bill does not have everything that I would like to see. For example, healthcare coverage for everyone, not there. A student loan cancellation, debt cancellation, ending the student loan scam. It's not part of this bill. However, what we do have are things like universal pre-K, that's 3 to 4 year olds. We talked about the child tax credits, which expire right now on December 31st of 2021. So this would be extending them, right? Medicare expansion, talking about taking the age of Medicare down to 60 instead of 65. And then, of course, lowering the cost of prescription drug prices, adding hearing, vision, and dental to Medicare expansion, which I know that many, many people, seniors on a fixed income that have worked their entire life and are totally dependent on Social Security, when the cost of their dental and their hearing and vision go up, it's extremely difficult because that is not covered by Medicare today. And so this is something that is one of the most popular, if not the most popular item in the bill. Unfortunately, not everything is going to be in there, and this is the sad part of this bill. We got climate mitigation, which is essential, but a lot of climate scientists have called me and told me that, the Build Back Better bill, climate mitigation parts in there are not necessarily the best. There's more work to be done with respect to climate mitigation and ensuring that we do things in a sustainable way as we go forward. All of that is not covered. We talk about paid leave, which is so essential that, an overwhelming majority of developed countries offer some sort of paid family leave. The United States does not. And this is something that I think for working families is essential. If we want to grow strong families, we need to give time to our families to bond. And that's why that is so important. And of course, I always leave the tuition-free community college till the end because that is my favorite part of this Build Back Better bill. There is nothing more essential that we can do. There is nothing more effective that we can do. And there is nothing with better ROI than investing in education. I can't, talk about this enough. I can't emphasize this enough that investing in education is one of the most important things that we can do, not just for our country, for our kids, and for our young people, but also to compete in the world stage as we go forward. Other countries are investing billions and billions of dollars in their students, in their young folks, whereas we are falling behind. We are saddling our children with enormous student loan debt. In fact, mortgage-sized student loan debt. And what is that going to do? It's going to discourage people from being highly educated, which is really, really important. So that's what was in the original Build Back Better Act that President Biden had proposed. Then last week, as I reported, the framework was agreed upon by both the White House and the House of Representatives, the Democrats in the House, and I assume that there was some sort of agreement from the Senate. And so this was what was talked about, keeping some of the child care, elder care in there, extending the child tax credit, but only through 2022. Some investment in climate. It does seem like a lot. $555 billion is a lot. But it's not just the amount of money that's being spent. It is the content of this climate mitigation factors in here, the investments in here. Do they actually impact the challenges that we're seeing in climate change? And I think that is a very important point that a lot of people have pointed out to me. And then, of course, strengthening ACA, that means, getting you more money so that your premiums go down. I've expressed to you many, many times the challenges with that. The biggest challenge is very simple. You can lower your premium down to zero even, but you can't go see a doctor if your deductible is $10,000 or even $5,000. Most people who are working for a living and have to purchase from the Affordable Care Act, they do not have $10,000 lying around, and they would be unable to really get health care. Sure, they have health insurance, but health insurance is not health care. And so even though strengthening ACA means, giving money and paying down your premiums, 100% of those premiums go to health insurance companies. They don't actually help you get health care. So even though that seems like a really good thing, and it is in terms of your premiums, like I said, at the end of it, it doesn't help with your health care. And of course, Medicare hearing coverage. And I have a little chart on this to show you what's still there and what's not. But before we go into the chart of what's gone, I wanted to talk about just a poll that was shared by PBS NewsHour here. 83% of Democrats, that's a whole lot of Democrats, and 28% of Republicans. But this is the part that I found interesting, that even 28% of Republicans support the president's Build Back Better framework. So if 28% of Republicans support it, you would think at least 28% of the House Republicans and 28% of these Senate Republicans, they should be voting for Build Back Better. That's pretty simple, right? That means there should be representatives that are supporting Build Back Better. Now, I'm not saying everybody needs to support it, but if 28% of Republicans support it, then an equal amount or somewhere close to it, some Republicans should support it. Right now in the House, we have zero support for the Build Back Better from the GOP members, and the same with the Senate. And that's just unacceptable because these programs are obviously very useful. They're investments in the American people, and they would absolutely strengthen our country in the future. And the ROI, the return on this investment, will be enormous. In fact, unimaginable when you help out working families, what they can actually accomplish for this country. Now, of course, over the past several weeks, you've heard so many times from Senator Manchin and Senator Kristen Sinema. So today is no different. Today we heard Senator Joe Manchin say, We can't go too far left. What is too far left? How do you define left? This is not a center left or left country. We are a center, if anything, a little center right country. I don't know what center right is. How do you measure center right? Can you actually calculate it and mathematically break it down? So it doesn't really mean a lot. That's been shown, and we ought to be able to recognize that. I don't know, is it just partisan politics? Because let's look at the actual policy that we're talking about and see how it impacts every single working family in this country. So we started at $10 trillion. That was the original investment that we said that we need in the American people. And I want to put that in perspective just for you. We spend close to $750 billion on average every single year. So over 10 years, that would be, over 7 trillion or $8 trillion, right? We're talking about a $10 trillion investment over 10 years in the American people. Well, that was too high. So the next number that was thrown out was $6 trillion. So lower than the budget that we have for our military industrial complex, okay? That was too high. So the floor was set at $3.5 trillion. We're talking about less than half of what we spend on our military budget. Investments into the American people, okay? That $3.5 trillion has now been slashed all the way down to $1.75 trillion. So what's left? We are still hearing that universal pre-K is there, but it would be limited somewhere between 3 to 5 years, and then it ends. So what happens after 3 years or 6 years? You don't get it anymore, apparently. Can we renew it? Possibly. Now, one of the strategies that I had discussed earlier in one of my videos was that one way to lower the cost would be to lower the number of years that it's covered. Looks like they're doing that for universal pre-K, and then you hope that it's so popular and so successful with moms and dads across this country, whether you're a Republican or Democrat, having universal pre-K, that's 3 to 4 year olds, right? It's a huge game changer for working families. So at the end of 3 or 6 years, the entire country, families across the entire country should come together and demand from their Congress to keep that program in place. And that is a good strategy to bring down the cost of the reconciliation bill, if that is what you're forced to do. And right now, that's what we're being forced to do, especially by a couple of Democratic senators. And of course, every single GOP senator does not support this, even though 28% of Republicans apparently do support this. We don't have 28% of the senators supporting this. They should, right? So that's where we are with the pre-K. So the blue is the change. The red was what was taken out before. Child tax credit would end in 2022. So they would end in one. They would be extended for one more year, and they would end in at the end of 2022. Medicare expansion only would have hearing. So dental is out. They don't want seniors to have good dental care, unfortunately. And then, of course, vision. You need glasses. You need to go see your, doctor for new glasses. Not covered. Not under Medicare. Hearing was discussed to be kept in. And of course, lowering prescription drug prices. Now, there was an agreement reached on lowering prescription drug prices. Here's the good and the bad. I'll start with the bad. The bad is that only approximately 10 medications of the thousands of medications out there can be negotiated in Medicare Part D, which is very dismal and, of course, very much unacceptable. The bad also is that the cost of the medication cannot exceed the percentage of inflation. That's very minor. So an expensive medication would stay expensive. Now, the good part of lowering the prescription drug price is that it is capped at $2,000 max out of pocket for each senior. Now, why is that good? Right now, the way Medicare Part D works is that you pay 5% over a certain threshold, and that threshold, I believe, is $6,500. So after you have paid $6,500 in medication annually, you would pay 5% of what your costs are. So capping this at $2,000 is definitely a big deal for those seniors that have very expensive medications. So that is essentially the best part about this deal. The worst part about it is that Medicare would not be able to negotiate drug prices, which, by the way, is very illogical. And the reason that it's illogical is that the Veterans Affairs does the same thing. They are able to negotiate drug prices, and all the private health insurance companies are able to negotiate drug prices, but Medicare is not. So it's disproportionately punishing seniors when it comes to drug prices. And that is a big challenge for seniors that are taking prescription drugs on a regular basis. Climate mitigation, there's some change, but it hasn't been completely slashed. Paid leave was completely out. Now, on this chart, I show 4 weeks are back on the table, according to Speaker Pelosi. 4 weeks is very dismal. It's extremely horrible. The original proposal was 12 weeks. It's down to 4 weeks, but that's where we are. And of course, tuition-free community college, I haven't heard a thing about it. So my favorite thing, my absolute favorite thing in the Build Back Better package, which is tuition-free community college, which, by the way, is the absolute best ROI on any kind of investment you could do in the American people, is out. And it's still out. And it hasn't gotten better, unfortunately. So I wanted to talk about immigration because there is some talk about immigration. Now, remember, earlier, there was a pathway to citizenship proposed for DACA recipients and TPS, temporary protected status, as well as some frontline workers, farm workers, a path to citizenship for those specific categories. That was thrown out when it was presented to the parliamentarian because she said that that cannot be part of a reconciliation bill. And I've also explained that the parliamentarian does not need to be fired. They can be ignored and they can be basically overridden by the Vice President of the United States. And if people in the Senate do not like this challenge or this basically ignoring the parliamentarian of the the Vice President of the United States does have that latitude, they can vote against it, but they would need 60 votes. And right now, the GOP does not have 60 senators, so it would stand. So it is possible. It is very important to understand that Democrats, if they wanted to keep a pathway to citizenship for DACA recipients and TPS recipients and frontline workers. Remember, they live here, they work here, they have families here, they pay taxes here. Basically, their taxation without representation is their life, and they live in limbo every 2 years, wondering whether they can renew their status, which is completely temporary, with respect to TPS and DACA. And of course, those who are undocumented have no status. So that is out. What is on the table is green cards or pathway to citizenship, specifically for people who came here prior to 2010. And they have to kind of meet all these specifications. So it's not a blanket pathway to citizenship or being able to adjust. However, they would have had to arrive before 2010. Now, there are quote unquote moderate Democrats. Again, I don't know what moderate means. There's no specifications about moderate or conservative. They don't like that. They don't want to give pathway to citizenship to anybody. What they want to give is what's called 5 to 10 years of parole. Now, they say that progressives are unhappy with that. Again, I don't know what the definition of a progressive is, but let's discuss what that really means, what parole really means. Parole means is we are creating a second-class status for people working and living in the United States, where they're in limbo. They have no pathway to citizenship. They don't really have any proper legal status to live, work, purchase a home, live out their American dream in this country, even though they're working here, paying taxes here, contributing to the economy here in every way, shape, or form. Many of them frontline workers, healthcare workers, essential workers during the pandemic that were there to help us get through this terrible pandemic that we're still in, that we still haven't recovered from. they would not be able to adjust their status to an American citizen or a permanent resident. They would be stuck in this limbo of what's called parole. So again, this has no support in the Senate, but is being discussed in the House. So it would have to go to the Senate. The parliamentarian would have to agree to it all over again. And of course, the Senate Democrats would have to all agree to this part of the immigration proposal. So that's where we are on immigration in this bill. So where are we on Build Back Better? Because now we're into November. Remember, we were supposed to have a vote on the bipartisan infrastructure framework (BIF), or the bill that's for what we call infrastructure, right? Hard core infrastructure, roads, bridges, railways, etc. That was supposed to happen back on September 27th. It did not happen. That vote is still pending. So as of today, Speaker Nancy Pelosi said, "I'll let you know as soon as I wish to. You're just worried about your own schedule." No answer. That's the answer. And of course, Capitol Hill reporter Sahil Kapoor is also reporting that Joe Biden is calling various House Democrats today to encourage them to vote for the Build Back Better legislation per two sources. He isn't advocating for a specific time to vote. He is deferring to Speaker Pelosi on that, but asking the members to vote yes when it's up. So as you can see, the White House is invested. They do want to see this bill passed, even though that is extremely stripped down. And the question that I had proposed to my Twitter spaces is, would you like this very stripped down bill to be passed? And the overwhelming majority wanted something. They wanted something to be passed. Of course, there were several who said that it's been stripped down so much, it's really meaningful. It's not meaningful, right, anymore for many, many working families. And so there was that opinion also, and some people felt very strong about that opinion. And of course, there were others that were, happy with just the bipartisan infrastructure bill passing. But overwhelming majority of Democrats want a Build Back Better bill passed. They want it to be substantive, meaning things that actually help working families, because that is what encourages people to put those Congress people back in their seats when they deliver for the American people. So that's what we overwhelming here. And then we see here reporting that the light atop the Capitol dome means that the House may not be done for the day. Possible votes late tonight on infrastructure and or special spending bills. If so, it would be very, very late. Now, I got all of this around 6 p.m. Central Time, and when I checked last at right before 7 p.m. Central Time, there hadn't been any vote. And there are so many small details here that are being right now negotiated that the chances of something happening tonight, it would happen very late. But the next 2 days are extremely critical, because then the House schedule, it becomes very difficult to pass this within the rest of the year. So the next 2 days are going to be very critical. Watch for that. Of course, this whole thing has been such a roller coaster ride for the American people, especially Democrats that have been wanting to see something passed, that we really are, want to see something done. So that's kind of where we are with that. So that brings us to Virginia. Virginia had a gubernatorial race this Tuesday. And of course, lots of opinions about that loss in that race. Let's see, what's my next slide? Okay. Well, Tuesday across this country, it wasn't just that race, but there was also a governor's race in New Jersey. And there were races across the country that were down ballot races. City council races happened. There were some special House races that happened. And across this country, people are looking to these races as a barometer to understand what will happen in 2022. And of course, the Virginia race being lost happened to be a big dismay for Democrats. Now, it was pointed out that usually Virginia and New Jersey, these races always happen exactly 1 year after the presidential election happens. And in most cases since the 1980s, both the Virginia race and the New Jersey race always flip from whoever won the presidency to the opposite party. So, for example, if we have a Republican president, we get a Democratic governor in New Jersey and Virginia. If we get a Democratic president, then we get a Republican governor or a Republican governor in New Jersey and Virginia. And that has been the case since the 80s all the way through now. Now, in 2021, it was just announced today that the New Jersey race has been called. The New Jersey race, the Democratic governor held on. The incumbent won. It was by a very, very slim margin, but he did win, but Virginia did not. Now, one thing that I noticed, and I'm not sure all who went to help and campaign for the New Jersey governor, but I do know that Senator Bernie Sanders went to campaign for him. Now, I know many people, many Democrats went to Virginia, and unfortunately, Democrats did not win that, even though President Biden won that with a 10-point lead. And unfortunately, this race was lost. So one of the things that we're seeing here, and I wanted to share this data with you, that 86% of Democrats trust that the United States elections are fair, compared with only 34% of Republicans. Now, the interesting thing is this data doesn't make any sense, because if you didn't trust that elections were fair, you wouldn't come out in big numbers to vote, which they did in the Virginia race. And it wasn't just that, Democrats were suppressed, it's that the enthusiasm among Republicans was much higher. And that was actually reported by PBS's Amy Walter. She often comes here and does analysis. One of the interesting things she pointed out is that the Trump/Republican voters are united and fired up. Biden voters, not so much, she says. In New Jersey and Virginia, GOP candidates for governor were getting 64% in New Jersey and 84% in Virginia of the 2020 Trump vote share. Meaning, if you looked at certain counties, certain precincts, and you were looking at what Biden got versus what Trump got, in Virginia, 84% of what Trump got was gotten in 2021 and 64% in New Jersey of the Trump vote share, which means the enthusiasm for people who voted Trump in New Jersey was much lower in New Jersey than Virginia. They came out 84% versus 64%. So you can see the difference there. And Dem candidates were just getting 65% in Virginia. So you see the opposite, 84% of turnout of those who voted Republican. For Republicans in Virginia, only 65 for Democrats, and 47% in New Jersey. The fact that in New Jersey that we even won, even if it's a slim, with 47% of what Biden got, is actually pretty good. And that's an intensity gap of 19 points in Virginia and 17 points in New Jersey. So the question is, there's lots of opinions out there. I'm sure you've read them or seen them all. Everybody has an opinion on this, on what went wrong in Virginia and could we have won. Now, I just want to repeat and point out that normally both the Virginia governor's race and the New Jersey governor's race flip from whoever the president is. Right now, the president is a Democratic president, Joe Biden. And so if we were to follow, conventional order, then both of them would have flipped to Republicans. So New Jersey did not flip. So that is actually a interesting point that, in fact, New Jersey did better. Now, that doesn't make Democrats happy because we wanted to win, obviously, Virginia as well. And the question is, how do we win? How do we win races across this country? I believe that if we deliver for the working people, if we invest in what really matters to working people, because a lot of people say that voters don't have the patience for all this information, voters don't understand policy, and voters vote with their feelings. But the data shows otherwise. Whenever you talk economics to voters and you talk about things that impact them, education is big, because parents with children, that is one of their biggest focuses. They think about things that impact them on a daily basis. That means, how do they pay their mortgage and their rent every single month? That is something that is on their minds. If you think about student loans, That's again a payment that they have to think about every single month. They have to think about housing their family, taking care of them, being able to put food on the table, grocery bills. Again, it's an economic thing that impacts them every single month. Healthcare, being able to take care of yourself, whether you have some issue that you have to go to the doctor for or not. Again, something that comes up regularly, especially if you have children, right? Making sure that they're healthy, they can play sports, go to school, etc. So those are the things that families and individuals and even seniors are thinking about on a day-to-day basis. If the Democrats have a strong economic message that focuses on healthcare, education, high-wage jobs, they can get the attention of all Democrats and many, many Republicans. Remember, 20% of Republicans support all of these things that are in the Build Back Better bill. What does that mean? That means those Republicans will either stay home and not come out to vote against a Democrat. They may not vote Democrat, but they will stay home because they'll be like, you know what? I actually want what's in that bill. I do want universal pre-K for my 3 and 4-year-old. I do want tuition-free community college. I want to see student loans, being eliminated and that scam being put a stop to. We have many people beyond Democrats that support these investments, and they are investments into the American people. And that's how we inspire voters to come out and vote. We must deliver for the American people. And here in Austin, Texas, we're energized, we're pumped. We want to take our message, to every single voter that we will be working for the working people. We will deliver for the working people. We will deliver results for them, and we will deliver solutions for them. And that's how we win. So with that, let's talk about what's going on in Texas. As I said, never good news, unfortunately. Today, the Department of Justice sued Texas over restrictive voting law. And I bring this up because, as you know, earlier in September, and even maybe earlier than that, I've covered a lot of the legislative key things that happened in the Texas legislature over the year this year. And one of them was the passing of a voter suppression bill, also known as Senate Bill 1. Senate Bill 1 made it more difficult to vote by mail by the GOP. Now, there are 2 items in here that the DOJ is actually fighting. One of them is that people who have a disability or people that have language barriers, for example, that are trying to vote, often seek assistance in voting. Now, when they seek assistance in voting, the person assisting them must file an affidavit and really reveal and put their name on the dotted line and sign this affidavit that can hold them legally accountable for doing something basic as translating or assisting. They have to have the voter, basically declare that, they did not, offer themselves up to help. So in many cases, if you have a parent or a grandparent or maybe an aunt and an uncle that needs help, and you're like, hey, I'll help you. Now you're offering yourself to help them instead of them coming to you. So there are all these logistical barriers that the GOP has put in, and they've made you legally liable. That has made it extremely difficult for people who are disabled, people who need assistance with their ballots. In fact, we just had an election on Tuesday, as you know, and there were 8 constitutional amendments in Texas, and they were very complicated to understand. Even people who have, who have voted their entire lives and are very familiar with propositions, were confused. Should they vote yes or no on these constitutional amendments? They're difficult to know exactly what impact they're happening. Now, a lot of those people ended up not voting because it's very, very, very difficult to find someone to help you and conform to all these things. So the DOJ is going after that part of it, number one. Number 2, they're basically saying that it violates Section 208 of the Voting Rights Act, which was gutted severely, as you know, several years ago by the Supreme Court. That was number 1. The second complaint was also that by requiring rejection of mail-in ballots to for certain paperwork not matching, that's not really material to establishing a voter's eligibility to cast a ballot. So what does that mean? What that means is in Texas, you are required to have ID to be able to vote. Now, how do you verify that ID when you're doing mail-in voting? During mail-in voting, they're saying that you're not only must your signature match, but if you put in your social security number or your driver's license number on your ballot, that must match what they have on file, specifically what you use when you signed up to register to vote, which could be decades ago for many seniors, or it could be even a decade ago. You wouldn't remember that, right? And they want all this, data to match. Now, if it doesn't match, your ballot could be rejected. It could just not be counted. And that makes voting by mail extremely difficult. And that's what the DOJ has sued Texas over. And of course, our GOP leadership is ready to defend Senate Bill 1. Senate Bill 1 is a bill that makes it much more difficult for people to vote. And this is not a qualitative assessment. I've given you a quantitative accounting of why Senate Bill 1 is bad and possibly violates the Civil Rights Act and is now being debated in the courts. So that is your update on Texas. I'll be back next Thursday, 7 p.m. Central Time. And in the meantime, if you want to get involved in the conversation, please do join me on Twitter Spaces, 9 p.m. Central Time. And thank you so much for joining today. And I hope you have